And we are live for episode number 34 of Lowering the Barrier. Today, we have one of the coolest guests, and I mean this like genuinely, one of the coolest guests that I've ever had on. Probably, I mean, look, guys, we're on episode 34, so this isn't like the highest bar to set, but I will say, in terms of like cool people that I know, like that I consider friends, I would say we're work colleagues first. That's how we came to know each other, but I think we're friends at this point. Anyway, here's her intro. Our guest today is a creative force in the fitness and wellness space, and I mean actual, genuine creative force. Tatum Brandt is the founder and CEO of Brandt Creative Company, a branding and web design agency that helps fitness, sport, and wellness brands make their mark. Known for her innovative approach and bold vision, Tatum has helped countless coaches and businesses stand out in the crowded, let's be honest, very crowded industry by building brands that truly resonate. With a finger on the pulse of the constantly evolving fitness landscape, she's here to share insights on emerging trends that shift from fitness to wellness and how coaches can leverage these changes to grow their programs, especially in the group coaching space. Tatum, welcome to the show.
Oh my gosh, thank you. What an intro. I watched a few of your other podcasts and you always crush the intro, but man, it's nice to be on the receiving end of those compliments.
I got that from, I think, 2 episodes ago. Another guy was like, what on earth? He's like, you smashed the intros. And I was like, I think it's the most important part, not only for the listeners to understand the respect that I have for the people that I bring on, including yourself, but also, I want to make you guys feel good. I want to set it off on a positive tone. So, okay, the first question that I have for you is, it's always like, I always like hearing about people's, how they got started, things like that. I'm always obsessed with the business side of things, coming from a family of business people. I just love hearing the business start stories. So your work, in my opinion, is very unique because you have brought your branding brilliance. I mean, genuinely brilliance. If you guys don't follow Tatum Brandt on social media, go look at it. Literally any of her videos. They're getting liked by Adidas. They're getting noticed by professional athletes. They're getting noticed by CEOs. And she's not this like millions of account followers. Now, we're saying this in April of 2025. You zoom out April of 2026, I would bet that she's well on her way there, if not there already. So anyways, Tatum, what originally drew you to the fitness/wellness space, and how did you get started building Brandt Creative Co.?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this a little bit before we hit record, but I started freelancing in college to essentially pad my design portfolio, land that really sweet agency gig, start getting that, the work that wins you the awards. And I started working. My first job in graphic design was as a freshman in college for the Department of Recreation and Health at my university. I have no idea why they hired me. I had no area of expertise, but it was fun. I got to create the posters that go in the backs of the dorm like bathroom stalls that give the like health lessons of like, hey, it's February, like go get checked for STIs, and like here's everything you need to know, or here's the intramural events coming up. And so because of that, everyone in the office that I worked with would bring their events to me and stuff and say, hey, can we make a logo for this like powerlifting event we have coming up? And so I ripped the USA powerlifting logo and put my university's stamp on it. But it was fun. I got really involved and connected with the fitness scene there, from like exercise science and kinesiology like students, and then from there they started to like pass me their, hey, can you build a logo and a website for my personal training company? And I really just fell in love with the space, both professionally and personally. There's so much passion in fitness and wellness, and it also feels like the passion is to help other people and to do something good. So it's really fun to partner with fitness founders like yourself and say, okay, I feel the energy. I get excited. I've gotten in trouble in the past for saying, I see your vision. You know what? I'm going to do it for free. Let's just do it. And so I've learned over the years. I started freelancing, and then I slowly started kind of hiring a team as I noticed my expertise got capped. So I used to build the websites and design the logos and do everything, and steadily would hire on a web developer, because my zone of genius was a little strapped. And it kind of grew from there. And now we have like a small team that works primarily remotely. And we work with, people in the fitness and wellness industry, from like coaches such as yourself to supplement companies, apparel brands, and even some other service-based businesses who serve the fitness and wellness industry, like photographers or like, events, which is really cool.
What were some of the biggest and scariest leaps that you had to take from the time that you started it until where you are now?
That's a good question. I think business owners can relate to, anytime you outsource something that you've been doing yourself, it's always better after you do it and you set the processes and the systems. But especially when it's creative work, making sure that the quality was maintained was really scary when I started to bring on web developers and other designers, and creative directors that we've got. And I think some of that just comes down to, I think there's a Alex Hermosi
Oh
quote,
yeah.
that's, hey, you got to hire people who are better than you. Like, leave your pride at the door and go hire people who are genuinely better. So anytime now that we have onboarding calls, I say, hey, here's my team. I know I sold you this project. They can execute on the vision that I see way better than I can. But it's been hard to get to that point,
Yeah.
hiring and trusting people with your creative vision.
Yeah, it's tough giving people, just signing over the project to somebody else. I think any business owner who starts on their own, not like a co-founder situation, but where it's on their own, it's like, ooh, adding another piece to the pot, adding another piece to this puzzle. That's a scary thing to do. So yeah, totally relate to that. All right, let's talk about fitness industry trends. So you have talked a lot about this shift from fitness as purely physical to more of this holistic wellness approach. Why do you think that this shift is happening, and how can coaches and fitness brands adapt to stay relevant?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a cool shift to watch. And then it's also scary, right? Because, being in this industry, you have to constantly evolve and adapt. So the second you have something figured out, it's time to change it and create a new process. But I think that what we're seeing has been, average consumers have access to so much more information about fitness and wellness through tech and wearables and all the things that kind of were those pandemic babies that really boomed. We went from like your classic Fitbit that just tracks steps to all of a sudden we have Aura and Whoop. And the people that you're likely coaching and selling to have more data than they know what to do with, and now have access to, recovery equipment and analytics that typically were just reserved for like pro athletes, elite athletes. And so helping your people understand how to utilize that data, it's not something you can say, hey, don't worry about it, because people care. And then you're also having to fight other algorithms like, Whoop or Aura that are telling your client, hey, you had a stressful day at the office. That means you need to recover. You don't need to go move today. And then you have to say, well, here's why that might not be true. So that's one thing we're seeing. The good thing is that post-pandemic, younger generations are prioritizing more of their discretionary income towards fitness and wellness. So they're dumping money into, boutique Pilates group classes, cold plunge tanks to have in their house, recovery equipment. And so being able to market off the back of that trend and saying, here's why it's important to either hire a coach or, get strategic programming to reach your goals, I think there's so much opportunity in the market now because people are wanting to spend money, but the way that you're going to market that looks different than it used to.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that. It's like people have more data than ever before, but they might not know like how to use it. And yeah,
No.
there are some algorithms that, they can tell you like, "Oh, hey, you slept like shit last night. You should feel horrible." And it's,
Mm-hmm.
it's always a little bit like I have to tell clients, and I'm sure every coach that you've worked with has to tell clients of, it's like, "Okay, well, let's just take this with a grain of salt. How do you actually feel?" There's only so much that this data can do. How do you intrinsically feel? It doesn't mean you have to skip a workout. maybe there's some grain of truth to it, maybe not. But yeah, I think what you said of helping clients understand the data, because clients do have, so much more of that data available. It's like, okay, how do they actually utilize this to get them to where they want to be, either faster, more efficiently, more pain free, all these kinds of things. So, absolutely love that.
And there's also, I mean, we're seeing kind of consumer trends more towards wellness as a whole. Like, there's the data, there's people spending more on wellness, but now people are like wanting their vacations to mirror like White Lotus style wellness resorts. And so a lot of gyms now and, companies are incorporating wellness tools like infrared saunas or ice tanks and cold plunges. And, these things that might feel silly, I think are becoming more and more, must haves for the people who are shopping around for fitness. So I think it's important to take that into consideration, even if that's not your primary offer. Sometimes having, like a hyper ice recovery equipment at your gym is now kind of a necessity, not just like we're luxury. That's kind of baseline anymore.
I think Planet Fitness was, I swear, they were like one of the beginners in that.
Yeah.
Like they said, okay, here's your standard, $10 a month membership. And then for $20 a month, you get the black card. Now you can bring a guest. You guys can go into the sauna. I don't know if they have a sauna, but they have a tanning booth. They have like the massage chairs. It's like, I'm not going to lie. I don't think I'm going to go into the Planet Fitness massage chair personally. Just doesn't, I don't know. It's like, back in, oh man, what year was it? Probably 2016. I got my eyebrow. Now, okay, this is a crazy thing that nobody in my audience knows. In 2016, one of my buddies was like, he's from California, he's a little different. He was like, you got to get your eyebrows threaded. And I'm like,
oh my God.
Okay.
Oh no.
Oh yeah. Okay. I'll do it. Whatever. So I go, I'm doing a road trip, and I'm in Philadelphia at the time, or just outside of somewhere in Pennsylvania. Right. And me and my buddy are walking through this mall, not the California guy, but somebody else. And me and him see this like threading kiosk in the middle of the mall, not like a spa inside. I mean, it's in the middle of the mall. People are just walking past me. I don't know how, if other people love getting their eyebrows threaded, I don't know how you do it. That was the most pain, like, I swear, top 5 most painful events in my life. My legs were like kicking, tears were streaming down my face. The woman was like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "It's fine, I'm good." My eyes, I have this photo, and my eyes are my eyebrows are so swollen and red. And I took chunks of snow outside because it was in winter, and just like held it to my face after. So,
this is such a canon experience for every single girl has had some sort of experience where they're like, "Oh yeah, I'll just go and." Getting your eyebrows threaded is so painful. That's hilarious.
Just like wax them or shave them or something. That like, there's no way I would ever do threading again. There's no shot. I don't know. I'm not big on plucking my eyebrows anyway. I do if I get some in the middle here. But anyways, this was not the point. Anyways, the direction that I was going with this was, Planet Fitness, they kind of started doing this back, however many years ago. But one company that you have been, kind of taking a look at is Equinox. They have been leading this wellness retreat kind of vibe.
Yeah.
They are definitely this higher class, sort of more exclusive fitness club or wellness club, more than they are just a gym at this point. So tell me about, I'm sure you do a good bit of research on, for every one of your social media posts, because they're so well thought out and in depth. What is Equinox doing right, and what should the average gym or coach learn from them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And Equinox specifically, there's a lot of things that I think they do really well, and a lot of things that I think we can pull from, that they're not necessarily doing super well. But the one thing that they do great across the board is they really understand their target demographic. When they launched some ad campaigns, they had a campaign that dropped at New Year's that was, hey, we're closed on January 1st. We're not here for those, resolutioners, you're committed or you're not. Which of course caused tons of controversy. Oh, yeah. People are, but that's the people who go to Equinox, that's their demographic of people, and they eat it up. So I think the most important takeaway from Equinox is to really, really understand your target demo and just lean into it hard, even if maybe
You
a
piss
post
some
will go
people off.
viral and you piss some people off.
Yeah.
But the one thing that Equinox is doing, they're introducing these, again, they understand their target demographic, and they're saying these people who spend hundreds of dollars on this gym membership also would spend a lot on a hotel experience, with like luxury sleep equipment. So they now have like a luxury sleep experience where if you stay at their hotel, they have the sleep lab where you can choose from a menu of like melatonin boosting lighting and sleep cocktails and things to enhance your experience. I posted about this and I had several people comment with mixed reviews. So I don't know if the
Interesting.
execution is living up to what they're promising, but I think those sort of 1% better kind of experiences, Equinox is leaning into those things because they know the people with the discretionary income, we've got the boxes checked of we're going to the gym consistently. Like we've got the basics. What are the beyond the basic experiences that we can add to things to go even deeper in the experience?
Not only as a friend of yours, and I'm using that, I'm being ambitious by saying we're friends,
No, we're friends. Yeah.
but as a fan of yours, genuinely, as a fan of the stuff that you create of your brain, is that something that you would ever do? Which is, would you go to some of these things and actually do like lengthy reviews, like go to an Equinox, wellness like sleep thing? Would you go there and do reviews? Is that something that'd be up your alley?
From a brand and marketing perspective, yes. From a simply, hey, we're just looking at giving this place
One
a
to 10.
review
Yeah.
based on my experience, my zone of, I'm not even going to say genius, but interest is within branding and marketing. So I want to show up and see what is that user experience like when I walk
Mm,
into the hotel, and then how can we take away some of those learnings and apply them to small businesses or CPG brands? What does that look like for you to take this weird little thing that gives your people like a 1% edge and go deep with it? And an example I recently heard, is if you know the soap company Aesop or Aesop, they're like a
hmm.
super high end luxury, soap company. But if you walk into one of their stores, they have these micro websites that you can go on that essentially talk about all the design elements and architecture inside of their stores, why they made all the choices they made. Bandit Running does the same thing with their like shoe or apparel drops each season. They'll have just a deep dive blog post that goes through, here's our mood board. Here's the Japanese artist we pulled inspiration from for the form of this shoe. Things that like this isn't going to give you a viral marketing piece. This isn't going to be baked into your top of the funnel strategy. But for the people who are like, go deep enough, they can go as deep as they want. And you're providing this really intense, deep experience for them to build brand affinity. And I think for smaller brands, you want to think about what can I kind of bake into that experience? If people are bought in, it shouldn't stop with just them signing up or saying, like opening an email or signing up for the email list. How do you bake in some little, you know, like pieces that they can kind of go down the rabbit hole with, that cater to their specific interest,
Yeah.
that's, around your brand personality.
Yeah, almost like little hidden Easter eggs that it's kind of like a fun
Exactly.
little treasure hunt for people who are even more curious about learning more. So, one of the people that I think you highlighted, or brands or companies that you highlighted in one of your previous videos that I really liked, was the Netflix dive into sports and
Yeah.
telling like messaging and stories around sports. And I'm a big fan of mixed martial arts. The UFC is definitely the leader in mixed martial arts in terms of a league. And one of the things that they haven't been doing well is promoting people not named Conor McGregor or John Jones. And I think, as the deal with ESPN, which has not been the best deal from many perspectives, as that runs out at the end of this year, Netflix is one of the leaders in, hey, maybe we're going to pick, this up. Maybe Netflix and UFC partner up. And so I am excited to hear, those conversations to continue and start telling stories about these individual athletes, because MMA athletes are just like a different breed. It's not a team sport. It's one person. Like
Yeah.
a fight is intense, it's scary. There's so much emotion that goes into it. But all this to say, one of the companies that you had said that there are brands out there that are kind of showing the reasons for all those designs, and you had shared the agency that did the work behind the Netflix sports. Oh my gosh, I loved looking through that.
Yeah.
Is that something that you like to do as well in your personal business decisions? Is kind of like sharing the story of the decisions that you made?
Yes, especially if we're diving into brand identity, like you're thinking about logo design and color palette and typography and motion design. All of those things aren't just, hey, here's what looks cool, and based off of your Pinterest board, here's what we generated. There's usually deep story kind of baked in to why we make decisions, from the weight of a font to the hue of a certain color. And so typically when we give a one concept identity design review as a part of our studio. So we just show one logo set. We don't give you three different options because we've pursued one option and go down, to the nth degree because we think it's the best. And so we share, here's all the story behind how we came to this conclusion. And that's always predicated with a bunch of deep work on brand strategy and brand personality building. We're looking at, what is your target demo's user journey? What's the pain point? What keeps them up at night? We're appealing to them first. And then we're looking at, what is your personality in the marketplace? Are you kind of tongue in cheek and a little funny? Are you very clinical and you want to be seen and perceived as the expert in your space? Maybe it's a mix of both. And all of those considerations come into play, along with, hey, where do you sit, against your competitors in positioning? Are you high ticket or, very accessible? Are you super high touch and hands on, or is this more templatized? And so we start to kind of plot those points, and all of that leads into the choices we make with color and type and logo design, which I think that's what makes a really impactful brand identity. We often, I think a lot of design studios don't share the story behind the scenes with those case studies because it is a lot of work to do that.
Yeah.
Um, but on the client side, those are the things that the end consumer may never hear the full story of why certain colors were decided on, but you feel it when you interact with a brand that's intentional versus a brand where, hey, maybe they just created a quick, brand identity in Canva or with AI. That works to get your product to market. But at the end of the day, you kind of feel where, ooh, this is like a living, breathing identity versus, hey, here's some colors, fonts, and a logo.
Yeah, hopefully, hope for the best, and the intentionality might be missing. When you are kind of thinking about this branding and the design around, a concept, how much of it is formula versus how much of it is vibes?
Oh,
You have your finger on the pulse. You've been doing this long enough that I know that you could go both directions. But if you had to say, what parts are more formula and what parts are more vibes?
that's a really good question. And I think it kind of varies client to client. Sometimes you work with someone who has such like a deep personality that comes through that applies directly to the brand that they're working with. So, especially if the founder is more of the face of the brand, we're picking and choosing elements of your personality that are going to be front facing. And anchoring that in. And so that tends to be a little more vibe driven. We have a specific formula that we follow to make sure that the strategic side of marketing and brand messaging, like we're hitting the high points. This is a message that's concise, it's going to sell. We're making sure that the colors are accessible, it works in all formats. And then we're just pulling from vibes from the founder. But then sometimes, you work with a business that occasionally will work with like somebody who has some funding or has a cool idea that they don't want to be the face of their brand at all,
Mm,
and they want to let the message of the brand carry through. So that's where we get really formulaic with, hey, let's really dive deep into your user journey. Let's go ahead and analyze the competition, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. We kind of take things through a system and let that uncover some of the personality that might have been missing initially. I
man.
think you can probably relate to being a founder who comes through with like, here's my personality and vision. how do I make this happen in a logo?
Yeah.
How do I translate this? Those are often easy. We can kind of pull from your brain and then enact it visually. But if you're just, I don't know, here's the product,
Yeah.
we have to
You
go
have to
through
figure
kind
out the
of a
product.
formula
Yeah.
and build a personality from scratch, which is also fun.
You man, you triggered something in me. SWOT analysis. I totally forgot about that. I have a minor in marketing, and so it's
Okay,
like I
yeah.
just went back to that. Like, oh my gosh, that was like red alarms all of a sudden. We did so much of that back in college.
So much, yeah.
Yeah. So going back to Equinox and brands like that who are really leaning into, what some people may call exclusive and what some people may call elitist, depending on the
Yeah.
perspective. What are some mistakes that could happen from really leaning into the niche that you're trying to target?
I think I think Equinox you can lean really hard into your target demo and also be tone deaf, and that doesn't work. So
Mm.
there's a way to be exclusive and elitist. I think if you look at a brand like, again, Bandit Running is top of mind because they just launched their like first shoe collab. Um, but they do such a great job at not being tone deaf, but while still being exclusive and
Mm.
elitist, but in a way that brings people in. Like, hey, you want to be part of this elite group of people and a part of the journey. So I think it's important to approach things with authenticity in that way and not be tone deaf, especially when you're a brand like Equinox, even though you're marketing to a wealthier demographic. It's still a gigantic brand. You don't want to be that exclusionary and
Yeah.
controversial. So I think that's one key takeaway. I think another takeaway is when you watch brands get really big, Nike is kind of a prime example. They hired a new CEO last year. And in December, he announced, hey, our brand strategy, we're going back to our roots. We're telling athlete stories. It's going to be athlete first, marketing strategy and story first marketing strategy. And I think a lot of the conjecture where they kind of fell off is they've just gotten so big that all of a sudden they're hyper accessible. They're in Dick's Sporting Goods and have these, gigantic installations that are kind of mismanaged. Dick's Sporting Goods might be using it to sell discount, Asics shoes, on top of their, it's just not managed super well. So they're like, how can we kind of pull back and be very strategic with our storytelling? So I think you can get lost in the world of marketing and trying to grow and ignore the thing that made people buy from you in the first place. And I think that's important, especially for smaller brands who are tackling social media. The landscape looks so different now than when you might have gotten into it back in 2016 or 2019. The same things don't work to grow. And what you don't want to do is piggyback off some, maybe viral trend that worked for another business, but is so outside of your own personality that it feels inauthentic. And I think doing that too many times, you can really lose that way.
I think that's a really interesting perspective, and I totally agree that like what may have worked 5 to 10, and this goes for every single industry, but I
Yeah.
really feel like fitness, especially, because one of the pillars of fitness is like you are welcome. This should be inclusive. This should be everybody. Whether you are the most jacked guy at the gym or you're just starting out day one, like we're all happy for you, and that's one thing that Equinox they kind of towed over that line, and
Yeah.
so that's one thing that maybe they did that was aligned with their brand vision, but it was maybe a little bit too far. Like we always want the gym to be a place where everybody feels welcome. So, moving forward 5 to 10 years, as we see a lot of brands and maybe fitness coaches as well, kind of toe their water in toward that wellness side of things. Hey, I'm focused on not just your lifts, but also your nutrition, also your sleep, also your mood. I want to make sure that you're feeling good physically and mentally and emotionally. How do you see this shift of fitness into wellness playing out over the next 5 to 10 years?
I think a lot of it is you've got to go back to thinking about your target demo first. Everything you put into the world needs to be through the lens of them first versus your business, which feels intuitive, but it's as small as even changing the messaging if you understand, hey, for example, we have a like perinatal strength coach who realized that a lot of her people were going down this rabbit hole of finding, weight loss and diet plans on Pinterest or TikTok before they finally fell into, okay, we're going to start strength training. Now we're looking for programming catered to maybe postpartum. When she shifted her messaging to talk about weight loss first, even in its antithesis, she kind of had like a top of the funnel re-education cycle where she was like, I hear you, you want this thing. Here's why these things you're searching for are not going to work for you or be sustainable, and it's going to drain you. And all of a sudden, her pool of people that she was reaching went from like the small percentage of people who knew about strength training and were participating in it to just a large swatch of people that she could then catch sooner in their journey. And all that comes from just a deep understanding of your people and their experience through that kind of journey in reaching you. And that also goes for just social media content is so narrative driven and storytelling driven now. It used to be where you could put up a quick swipe post on like, 3 ways to get your
5
treadmill
ways,
program
yeah.
up. Download my ebook in my bio. And that went viral.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work that way anymore. You got to tell a story. You have to approach things with personality and authenticity. And then you can connect the mini chats and say, also, here's a free resource I created. Just comment, treadmill, and I'll send it to you.
Yeah, no, I've seen that so much. And I think that's a really, really good takeaway for the coaches listening. It is client first, not business first. You need to think about, one thing, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Mike Dola, but Mike Dola is really big on go where your people are, don't worry about, don't go where you think you should be. Go where you think people are. And if the people are there, you're going to get business. And so maybe that is, he always used this was back in, the 2010s probably. He would go into Facebook groups and just answer, and like CrossFit Facebook groups specifically, and he would just answer nutrition questions. And he became the nutrition guy within that, industry.
Yep.
He wasn't trying to sell CrossFit workout plans in the CrossFit group. He was selling nutrition. He was being complimentary to those, spaces. So I think that's a really good point. It's thinking about, for the perinatal person that you're working with, she started talking about the messaging that most people are looking for, and then injected some of her own advice. And I think that's such a smart way of, thinking about that.
And it's also becoming about how do you create like moments that people can participate in with your brand. I think if you look at Nick Bare, who has Bare Performance Nutrition, they're constantly creating little moments that people, their community, can participate in. One of them is just following a like hero's journey from his personal journey in, competing in like Ironman events and training for them. Or now he sponsors athletes like Lucy Davis who are going to High Rocks events and saying, follow my journey to break this world record. And they have like a whole content series off the back of that people can kind of relate to in certain capacities. We love to follow a hero's journey. And then there's things like, larger brands like a Hard Work Pays Off are running ambassador programs that are saying, hey, this isn't for people with tens of thousands of followers. It's for our direct community. Like, we'll give you things to love on you, and you're going to go tell your 600 followers and your direct family and friends, like, hey, I am so about this brand. You should participate in it. And those are like really small ways that you can kind of create these moments and give back to your community and prioritize community first. I think that's a lot of the marketing that we're seeing in the next 5 to 10 years, that community first strategy. Even just running, like, you might not be able to put on like a marathon or a full event, but you can run virtual events. Like, hey, I'm going to go show up at this race, participate in it with me virtually. Here's the training plan that you can hop on. Bandit Running did that with a Boston marathon training program that people could complete virtually and then show up to run clubs. Like, those are like very inexpensive ways to kind of create these community moments instead of just waiting for, people to find you on social media when you're posting about things they're interested in.
Yeah, I think that shift that you had mentioned is we've seen it play out over the last 5-10 years of going from macro influencer like the Kylie Jenners, the mega influencers of the world, to brands and companies are now reaching out to smaller and smaller and smaller. And it was like first, millions of followers. Now then it was hundreds of thousands, then it's tens of thousands, and we're now getting to the point where they might reach out to somebody who has 600 followers, something like that. Like it's literally just their friends and family that are following them, and they're like, no, I want you, because people buy from people that they trust. I had this 4 foot wide freaking shovel, right? And this thing was a beast in my cul-de-sac. People would watch me just clear my driveway in like 5 minutes. It's amazing. I love this thing. And next thing you know, I swear to God, 2 weeks later, I didn't even tell my neighbor about it. He saw me using it. 2 weeks later, he has it. And it's like when you see people that you trust, using something, you're like, okay, I'm going to try that thing out too. Maybe it's a brand of shoes, maybe it's a program, but something. You need to know somebody personally that did that. And I think the way that you put that forth of, you don't have to be this hundreds of thousands or millions and put up thousands of dollars to create your own running thing in Omaha, Nebraska, or wherever. You can do that virtual event. I think that is such a good idea of like, here's my training plan, here's what I'm training for, and let's,
Mhm.
you do your event there, you do your run event here, and we can all just kind of look at our times together. And it's really about improvement in your own place, because as this fitness space has gotten bigger, so much of it is virtual now. It used to be personal trainers
Yeah.
were only in person, and then especially 2020 being a really big impetus for that shift of now more virtual. I think that is
And
you nailed it.
we're kind of shifting back
Yeah, back to in person.
to in person, but it's kind of this fun hybrid of virtual and in person events that come together. And I think certain brands execute that really, really well. You're also seeing gigantic brands dive back into subcultures, like super small subcultures, to build up loyal followings, like Adidas with CrossFit and Puma
Yeah.
with High Rocks. There's run clubs that Puma and is reaching out to say, hey, run in this shoe, and you're going to kind of launch this within your personal infrastructure. I know like Celsius is trying to sponsor athletes in, like run clubs and F45, and like it's going back from these mega influencers and saying like, let's kind of build up a name in these subcultures in a way that feels authentic, not like we're coming in from the outside. Which the cool thing is that's easy for small brands to execute on. So you can say, if you really understand a specific pocket of the market, like I would double down on it, and then kind of start and grow that way.
Get as niche as possible in something that you're excited about, and then start growing from there. I think that's such a good idea. And I was just about to ask, as these group programs become more popular, like for example, so many coaches these days, if they have some kind of group coaching program, and a lot of
Mm.
times it's fitness only, there's some kind of training or running component. But how can coaches with those group programs start to utilize some of these emerging trends of hybrid fitness, for example, or wellness coaching
Mm.
or digital community building to make their group programs more appealing?
I think it's important to first kind of look at the logistics of what is your area of expertise in your zone of genius, because of course you don't want to dive into, oh, there's some trend in wellness that like I don't care about, I don't believe in, but we're going to incorporate it anyway. Like let's start with what are the things that you do in your routine that you
Yeah.
can bake in, and then that becomes, content, even if it's not to social but to your people, right? Like, hey, I wake up and I do this thing. Let's do this together. Can we have like a 30-day, time on feet challenge or hydration challenge? You know, recovery things that we can bake in, like habit stacking. Those are the things that I would kind of start with, like the super easy pieces. And I think it's so important when you have group coaching to have, constantly shocked by the number of training apps that don't have a community feature.
Yeah.
It's crazy to
It's
me.
crazy.
Even gigantic programming, companies like the Provens or the Hard Work Pays Off have a separate circle community,
Yeah.
which should be native to your
It
app.
should
So
be in the app.
it should be in the app. So if you
Yeah.
have the ability to have like a forum like that you can organically start posting in. Like start with something small. It doesn't have to be a gigantic circle build out. But then if you want to go deeper, have like Zoom calls where, hey, we're hanging out on Friday. I'm answering your questions. Let's have coffee or let's drink some water and go on a walk. Like those are small things like you would do with your friends that you could kind of start to bake in.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh. Okay. I mean, this is so practical, and it's something that I think of for a lot of the coaches that do follow me, who either do already have the group coaching, business set up, or their program set up. It's something that they so easily could start utilizing. The grabbing your coffee and just chatting, or the going on a walk with people and just like you chat there. We all have internet on our phones now outside of the home, thank God. Anyway, so just
And this is
awesome.
something too, you can look at like depending on the personality of your business, running small challenges that you might open up to the public in, like, hey, my
Oh
group
yeah.
coaching program, the month of February is all about sleep and recovery. I'm dropping educational content, and then we also have this like tracker that I've put out. And it doesn't have to be anything too high tech, but if you can kind of share that forward facing and you can share your own journey, you can share your clients' journeys, and then you can say, download this tracker, post it on your story. We're putting an emoji over every day. Like it can be very low tech, but like, what are some ways that you can bring people in to kind of a challenge in a way that's a little systematized and structured that might bring them back into the funnel of your program?
One of the ideas I had a while back, we're taking a quick shift here, and back to the storytelling that you had talked about. That's so important. And I think it's so valuable, not just for social media. Storytelling is obviously dominating, it always has dominated.
Yeah.
Going back to when we were cavemen telling stories around a campfire place, like we're on Instagram, no campfire, but we're doing the same stuff. So stories are never, that is something that's really not going to ever go away. We love storytelling and we love listening to stories. But one of the ideas I had a while back was when I was thinking about getting back into one-on-one coaching was I want to bring on these really high ticket people, handle every single part of their fitness, their wellness, and just try to systemize it in a way that makes as much sense as possible. Be taking looks at their refrigerators, their pantry, all these things, on video, and just like, let's set up as many systems as possible to make sure that this is lifelong for you. Then down the road, 1, 3, 6, 12, probably not one, but 3, 6, 12 months, I wanted to be able to fly out to them with a videographer and interview them and tell their story and make it into this YouTube series where it's like, this is this person's story, this is that person's story. And I would just do this continually. Now, the logistics of that, it's tough,
Yeah.
like that's a big bar to raise. And like the amount that I would have to charge in order to do that, it's a lot, that's just realistic to be able to have that much of a hands-on, approach, and the time investment. Now, it's something that not gonna lie, I'm not totally writing that off. I might still pursue that down the road,
I was going to say, that's
but
a cool idea.
I would love to do it.
There's
I mean,
something there. Yeah.
if anybody's listening that wants to take me up on this, you let me know. I will handle, like, you'll get a big discount. Like well, yeah, I would love to do it because I think it's like nobody's doing that, not in the coaching space as far as I've seen. But where I'm going with this is stories like that are in a way easy to tell because you have such direct access to that. If I were to fly out with a videographer, it's like, okay, we set up some chairs, we have a conversation, we go through a workout together, we go out to eat together, we're talking this whole time, we edit that up into a video, bing bang, boom, we're good. For the people who don't have that luxury, which is basically 0% of people, how do you get better at telling the stories of your clients, especially in a group program?
Well, this is something that I've been, if you're kind of on a friend basis with me, as I have half-baked marketing ideas, I'll send you a voice message about it. So I'll add you to that list,
Yeah,
Alex. But I was
please.
telling one of my friends what I think is even better than that, because often you see these like case studies of client videos where they've walked through their journey and somehow they still fall flat. Where I think I was talking with a friend about, why do people wait so long to sign up for my program? I know it's higher ticket, it runs about $90 a month, but there are people who have been in my pipeline for 2 years and you just wait to pull the trigger. And I think a great thing that I would want to trial to address that is looking at, okay, let's look at every single pain point and like objection that they might have, because it's around price, but it's not around price. There's a, I
Always.
don't have
Yeah.
time right now. I work night shift. I have
Yeah.
3 kids. Like, what are the things that people are saying? So like try to pull those out from whatever survey tools you have and do some research. And then how can you then go find clients who have overcome that objection and
Oh,
said, hey, I work night shift. I just trained for my first ultra marathon. And
yeah.
here's how I did it. It's because I finally had this programming. So be strategic and find in every objection point along somebody's client, like customer journey, pull a story and find a real person to address that. And a real application of this with a larger company, if you're familiar with Ladder,
Yeah.
the like strength training app,
Yeah.
the brand director there essentially has an algorithm that's all of their reviews that come in from the
Yeah.
app.
I saw
He
that one.
he like pulls a lot of words and phrases from there. And so all of their marketing campaigns, they kind of cracked the puzzle by saying, instead of saying things like, you know, progressive overload when they're talking about some of the benefits, they're scanning their reviews and saying like, how are our users describing the benefits? And
Yeah.
they word for word copy paste use that exact language, and they're able to quickly and easily, they saw like signups increase by a lot and engagement on social media platforms increase by a lot, because the hook that they were using on their videos was literally copy and pasted from what their clients are saying. He said early days they kind of went through and analyzed that like by hand, but now you have tools like ChatGPT and AI,
Yep.
and you can run mass data through it and pull some real data from it to craft some marketing. So that's where I'd start. You don't have to fly out to them. You can say, hey, set up your camera, film some kind of like selfie style recorded video about X, Y, and Z, and then you can send it to your video editor, chop it up, and ship it.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I loved what Ladder did, because I saw your last week's roundup or this week's roundup. I look forward to those every single week. And I saw their Severance ad. I was
Yeah,
like, oh my gosh, they're just
so good.
crushing it! Like it's so good. Like they and her just going into like the pantry, closing the doors. It was like you
Which is
guys
something
nailed
that
this.
everyone can relate to. And again,
Yeah.
that's participating in a cultural moment that's happening. People
Yep.
are watching Severance, we're obsessed with it.
Yep.
And then saying, what's something we can all relate to? Kids are screaming, I want to do my workout. What if I could go in the pantry, close the door, and things are
Yeah.
different?
Right.
It's incredible. That's also what happens when you have really great creative, or prioritize your funds for really great creative. The brand director there, Philip Edsel, he was one of the founding members of that small team. The
Mm.
founder said, we're prioritizing creative and marketing, and you're coming in. And then they popped off on, TikTok and Instagram, and they have these marketing campaigns that will just go viral.
Man, they deserve it too, because that I saw that I was like, damn, why didn't I think of something like this? That's
Yeah.
so good. And I love it, and I hate it when it's
You
like,
hate it. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, why wouldn't I have thought of that? Great.
And
It's
again,
so good.
the other thing they did, of course, they have the video team that goes out and shoots that ad, but
Right.
they scanned a lot of their reviews for terms like turn my brain off. And
Yeah.
so people are talking about their app like, I'm so glad that I can turn my brain off and just
Mm-hmm.
hit go on this and get my workout in, because the rest of my life is so stressful, which is something that I would say 90% of coaches can make use of.
Yeah, and I'm sure with enough coaches, they could get a testimonial that is similar to that, and then just throw it into a spreadsheet, throw all your testimonials into a spreadsheet, upload it to ChatGPT. There you go. You have all of them that are similar to that. I mean, yeah, I'm a big fan of the power of AI and utilizing that in some of my upcoming projects, which I'm really excited about. Speaking of, AI, it's not going anywhere. Sort of speaking about AI, it's not going anywhere. And a lot of brands could be utilizing that or other things that aren't really going anywhere, to make sure that they have longevity in this space. So, as somebody who has built countless brands in the space, or at least helped build countless brands in the space, what's the secret to creating a brand that not only stands out but lasts the length, the test of time?
Mm. Yeah, especially in the fitness and wellness industry, because so many of these brands are so DIY and self-started, which you kind of have to be at first. They tend to start to all look the same. We all see the same design trends on Pinterest or Dribble or, Arena. We're copying and pasting them. And then you kind of get lost in this sea of, vanilla. There's no personality. So I think what I always go back to for creating a timeless brand is personality. If
Mm.
you can extract your brand personality right up front and then build everything else off the back of that, that's really what's going to create a brand that can kind of go the distance with you, because you can adjust creative, introduce new colors as, algorithms shift and preferences change, introduce new fonts with different campaigns. Those are things you can play with. But the way to make it feel consistent to your brand, if you have a personality that you're pulling from, we know here's the vibe of all the different creative we're pulling, instead of we're trialing everything and seeing what sticks. I think that's really the key. You can get really you can be trend forward and focused within your marketing campaigns, but within brand, you want to be like timeless. Um, and I think personality is really the root of that. And then really understanding your target demographic in such a way that as they shift and evolve, you're clocking it so you can shift and evolve your messaging and language. Because brand, it might be something that you invest in once with a designer or an agency, but it is a living, breathing thing. And you should constantly be going back. And even if you're never changing your logo, like how many times has the Nike logo changed? Not that many. But you see their campaigns that they're running, it's all built off the back of this authenticity for the most part. But they've constantly shifted as times have changed, as new cultural moments have arisen. It's all off the back of that.
So one of the things that you said is extracting personality. Well, it is basing it off your personality and making sure that that's kind of a big thing that inspires your brand. And I think that's something that people can really latch onto. But conversely, I think there's a lot of people, let's say we go out with our friend, I don't know, Susie, right? And Susie meets our other friend. They've never met, two different friend groups. Susie meets, I don't know, Brenda, right? And you're like, Brenda, Susie's so great. You're going to absolutely love her. She's amazing. I think you guys would really hit it off. You're going to be great friends. And then Brenda and Susie meet, and it's like Susie doesn't show up. Like, I don't know what's like Susie, like, emotionally is not there. Like, she's super shut out. Maybe she's a little introverted. Maybe she's just not comfortable or confident. And I think we've all kind of had that experience of a situation like that, whether it's with ourselves or with one of our friends, where it's like we don't see their personality in this situation the same way that we
Mm,
see their personality behind closed doors. Like, oh, he's
yeah,
so funny if you get to know him, but he needs
right.
to open up, or she needs to open up. And so how would you go about almost extracting the personality of somebody who has a tougher job doing that on social media, for example?
Yes. I mean, I'm introverted at my core. I can be outgoing, but I would classify myself as an outgoing introvert. So I relate to this heavily, especially on social media. Like, what I find often when you, as the founder or as a personal brand, is so deeply attached to your social media presence and your business, what can be also difficult is you're a dynamic changing person. So like we have contrasting elements of our personality that might not make sense in the format of a brand on social. So how do we kind of portray those things authentically, without putting on like a different face? How do we retain that authenticity? And I think as a personal brand, one of the best things to think about is to kind of create a persona of yourself that is your online persona. It's still authentic, but it's very key elements of you that relate back to the person that you're talking to. So when I show up on social media, my everything from my sense of humor to the content that I'm putting out is all through a very specific lens of I know my audience is going to be interested in these things and will care about these things. What they may not care about is the brand of it, jewelry that I buy, or this, weird little animal meme that I think is funny. Like that's my personal stuff. So I think really mapping out those things from tone of voice to your specific, like, here are the pillars of my personality, whether you're a brand or a person, I think is really key. That also kind of helps as your life shifts and changes, as you have more or less to give or more or less to share on social, because we all share, different ranges of personal information on social. That kind of helps keep things like consistent, so you don't feel like social media is kind of sucking your soul away, which can be common if you're a personal brand. And some tools that I really use to do that are, one is called the brand archetype chart. It's a wheel. If you've ever seen it, if you Google brand archetype, there's like a million different quizzes. Not all of them are great. But what I would do is just Google brand archetypes and read each description. Typically, there's a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary archetype that your brand kind of falls into, or you as a person kind of fall into, that you can start to craft. So maybe we're the hero, the outlaw, and the sage. And there's descriptions under each. That kind of starts to map out, here's how I show up. One of our clients, Jester, was their tertiary brand archetype. So there is an element of humor they're trying to inject in, maybe not every single post, but every other post that they're putting out into the world. And the other tool we use is tone of voice. We always give the example of, like, are you showing up like Shaq or Jocko? Both are, showing up with their different brands, but in wildly different tones of voices. Oh, yeah. Are we, joking around or waking up and grinding at 4 a.m.? And there's an audience for both of those. So kind of where do you fall on those charts? And then we also leverage this thing that we call chaos theory. So if you've ever seen like a chaos chart, this is chaotic good, lawful evil. That chart kind of originated in Dungeons and Dragons, which is super nerdy, but it's essentially for how people move throughout the game and how their character makes decisions. That's how they start to understand, here's what my character would do, which I think is just perfect for brands trying to move throughout an industry authentically. So often we try to kind of plot you out on that chart too and say, hey, am I like a chaotic good, like a gooder sunglasses? Am I a lawful evil, like Elaine Norton? Like, how am I showing up in the world? And like all of those little tools will kind of help you start to have pillars of like, here's who I am, and then here's who I'm not. I'm not a person who shows up without doing a lot of research or having something that's science backed. I'm not casual. I'm very clinical. Like, those are the things you want to know so that you can kind of maintain that personality as a person, even as your life kind of shifts and changes.
I think that one thing that you had mentioned is, it's about less about putting on a mask and more about kind of seeing and posting through this filter. There's just a coffee filter that you're just some things are going to make it through and some things are not. And I think that's one thing that I personally struggled with a lot in social media a couple of years ago was like you said, Dungeons and Dragons is super nerdy. Look, I vibe with that so hard. Tonight at 8 p.m., my guild, hope to God, will down the Goblin King Gallywix in World of Warcraft. So like,
that's amazing.
I'm all about it. I'm very much with it. I swear to God, if we have to do another raid night on Thursday night, I'm going to lose it. Anyway. But so I relate to like putting on a mask because I wasn't sure about sharing that side of me, the super nerdy side. People see me as like, now I'm a dad, but before I was just like athletic, fit guy, maybe evidence-based. And at one point I had people submit 1 to 2 words that they felt explained me. I put it into like this word cloud, put it up on my website. And so it's like people at a glance can kind of understand who I am and what I'm about.
Oh, that's
Unfortunately, cool. Not too many people said funny, humorous, like everybody's they're great. It's trustworthy. It's knowledgeable. It's evidence-based. It's things like that golden retriever I got a couple times, whether that's because of my personality or because I have 2 goldens. I'm not really sure. I'll take it either way. But one of the things I think that, it is about trying to put on less of a mask, trying to show up authentically to prevent burnout. And the question that I have along this is, you had mentioned that you just went to Kilimanjaro. You were feeling a little bit nihilistic towards social media and things like that. Hopefully you don't mind me saying this on air.
No, this is great. Yeah.
And I think it's sometimes, I think, as business owners, especially people posting on social media, we have to balance, like, okay, I know that posting on social media is borderline and non-negotiable at this point. Can you grow a
Mm-hmm.
business without social media? Absolutely. But is it a pathway? Absolutely it is. And it's very accessible to just
Yeah,
click record, press post, whatever, right? And so it's kind of a non-negotiable, especially in the fitness and wellness space,
mm-hmm.
especially if you want to be online. In my opinion, you have legitimately mastered social media with your takes on the industry, getting noticed by the likes of Adidas. I mean, like, huge brands are noticing you,
Crazy.
right? So what's one underrated strategy that coaches can use to build their brand without feeling that burnout?
Oh, I mean, I'm glad you brought it up because this might be kind of my inner like artist that kind of comes out and does me dirty. But every now and then I just get this overwhelming feeling of like, what are we doing here? It all feels so fake. This cannot possibly be the career path that I have chosen. Are you kidding me? One good thing is that used to, when you're growing a business, to get like 3 million impressions, you would have to go on a TV show like a Shark Tank.
Yeah.
Whereas now you can post a video, and if it's well crafted and people resonate with it, it might get 3 million impressions. So like,
Yep.
it is such a great tool. And I think what I go back to, and the reason why I hadn't built up a social media presence in the past, is because I didn't see a pathway for me that felt authentic and something that felt true to my personality and the reputation that I wanted to build in the space. And it wasn't until I saw other content creators, creating not like super highly produced, but more put together content. They weren't dancing and pointing at the screen, which was something that I was like, if that's what it takes for me to grow my business, I'm
I was
out.
No,
I
me
can't do
too.
it.
Yeah, no, it's not me. I can't.
And some of my friends have leveraged that strategy and grew infinitely and
Yeah,
then rolled off into other things. And it worked because they're like a funny, like friendly personality on Instagram. And I just knew that wasn't me. And
yeah,
so being able to look at, what is the type of reputation that I want to build in the space, and how can I kind of use this as a creative outlet to explore ways to build that reputation that feels authentic to me. So social media has been a great tool for me to kind of, almost like those voice messages I send my friends of half-baked marketing thoughts. It's a great way for me to say, hey, I kind of noticed this trend that I see within, the indie running space. Let's talk about it. And if I am able to chop it together in a format that grabs people, they're going to stay for the information if it's genuinely interesting. I think the thing that a lot of coaches now are really struggling with in kind of the way that social media has changed is getting people in the door so that they sit and stay. Because
yeah,
people's attention spans, yes, they're shorter, but they're not really. People are staying for 3-minute videos and are going to
yeah,
watch the whole thing.
yeah.
It's a matter of hooking them right out of the gate,
Yep.
which can be difficult when you're in the fitness industry because using clickbait phrases and titles, oh, you got to be really careful with that.
Yeah.
But I think something that has really helped me is just practicing crafting hooks. I have like a quick note shortcut on my phone where when I see a great hook, I tap it and I paste it in, and then I try to use that and apply it. So like every single video that I create, it's how can I get people in to lock in for that first like 2 seconds. Once they lock in, they're probably there for the rest of the
Yeah.
video. And that's really kind of unlocked everything. And it's a combination of what is the thing that you say that grabs people? Is there a visual title on the screen that gives kind of a synopsis of what you're about to talk about? Because they might stay. I think podcasts are a great example. When you post podcast clips, sometimes there needs context for you to get to the meat of the conversation. Just post the context also. Like, what is the meat of the conversation? So people are going to stick around to hear that juicy thing that you're prepping people for. And then sometimes having an additional visual hook. For me, sometimes there's green screen, so there's things moving in the background or a photo. Or can you be just like doing something like unscrewing your water bottle cap so people are kind of, or like chopping something so people are locked in as you're saying something. It's so stupid. These are kind of like advertising principles that are surfacing in social media now as the landscape has changed, because you have great information. You just have to It's not the algorithm, it is your content. You just have to repackage it in a way that people are going to stay and consume it.
Yeah, I always think it's sort of a cop out when people say like, "Oh, it's the algorithm that's like burying my information." It's like, well, the algorithm is just like people just like these companies just want people to stay on their platforms. And so if your stuff is interesting and it's getting people to stay, the algorithm is going to push it to more people. So you just need to make
Mm-hmm.
your stuff more interesting. And like you said, you nailed it. The hook is the most important thing. If you can get people to just stop scrolling for a second and you start, kind of opening up this package of information, then
Yeah.
okay, yeah, it's going to stick around. Some of my more viral stuff has been the when I open up with a question, that curiosity
Yep.
gap. It's like that's such an easy one where it's like a lot of times it was the two-person thing that I was doing for
I
a
was going to
while.
say, you do such a great job with this with little skits. You're
I
giving
hate doing them.
people
I
how
hate doing them.
to, but it's funny. It gives kind of your
It
personality
works.
and you're like,
Yeah.
you're entertained, but you're learning about that how to principle of something that you would want to say in maybe an extremely boring swipe post, or
Yeah.
you coming on camera and saying, here are 3 methods to blah, blah, blah. But
Yeah.
instead, we're kind of in for the ride of the skit and it works.
Yeah, it's a tough balance, I think, for a lot of creators of trying to be entertaining while still also, not being like a lot of times I've told my wife that I feel like a fucking clown on social media because I just have to stand up there and perform, like dance monkey dance kind of thing,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of people feel that. So how do you balance trying to make it as engaging as possible while still maintaining your identity and the things that you
Mm.
want to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think it again comes back to your personality that you want to put out there. If humor is a key part of your personality, kind of like yours is, like people are in, like they buy into the person of Alex. So all of a sudden, we're in for the humor, we're in for the skits. Like this feels authentic. If I were to do a skit tomorrow, it would feel so inauthentic and forced because that's not like part of the personality
It
that
would
I'm
be
trying to.
pretty jarring, actually,
It would
if
be
you just
very
did like.
jarring. Which, that's the other thing. You can have different types of content that you're
For sure.
experimenting with, and I think you should. It is also often when people hit follow, it's because you have bingeable content. Like I know exactly what I'm getting from you. And if I hit follow, like your entire feed kind of backs up the type of content that I'm putting out. But I would say like there's multiple methods to kind of break through the algorithm and hook people in. It's finding the ones that feel authentic to you and are easy for you to execute on. Something that would feel authentic to me is maybe like a very highly produced, video series, but I don't have the time or the bandwidth for that. So we're
Yeah.
not going to do it. Like, what is that? Whereas green screen is relatively easy for me to chop together and I can
Yeah.
execute on it pretty consistently. So it's, I'd say just scroll through social, see what people are doing that are outside of your direct sphere of influence, and hit save on some things and just try them. I will, the last thing I'll say, I went through a social media course essentially that was like a 30-day boot camp, run by these dudes who just work in marketing. So they're like,
Hmm.
hey, here's what we're seeing that works. You can create viral videos. It's not impossible. Just try it. And what they have you do is they just have you try different formats until you find one that really works for you. And the first green
Oh,
screen video I did popped. And so
wow.
after that, I was like, all right, this is what we're sticking with. And, people are going to get tired of green screen and the algorithm's going to change and I'm going to have to pivot. And it's again finding what is the thing that is easy for me to execute on, but is also aligned with the reputation I'm trying to build online.
Love that. All right, let's thank you for so much for your time. Let's wrap it up with what's next for Brand Creative
Yeah.
Co. Any upcoming projects or initiatives you're excited about, and tell us a little bit about Load Women.
Yeah. Okay. So for Brand Creative, we're getting really dialed in on our brand strategy and messaging process. We have such a cool process that we take people through, but the missing piece that I've been working on kind of in the background is how do we translate that to marketing and web? And so we're currently trying to roll out, hey, if you work with us for a website project, here's a template tutorial kind of library and templates that live in your backend for you to throw up. Hey, here's a landing page, based on the social media post that went viral with a sequence where people can like get on my email list and download or learn more about my program for you to A and B test. Like, how do we make those really, really accessible? Templates online, website templates are super hyper accessible, but
Mm-hmm.
really strategic marketing templates that are not buried behind this like crazy CRM, like a Go High Level, are more difficult to have
Yeah.
access to. Like, how do we make this native on your website platform? So fortunately, we use a tool called Webflow to build a lot of our websites. They have like these native marketing modes that you can say, hey, we make it super easy. We've got your brand loaded in. Deploy this landing page, go A and B test it, and then we're empowering you with here's how to track the data so that you understand how to come back and, oh, I need to change this line of copy because people aren't scrolling past this point. So that's what I'm working on and kind of what's next for Brandt Creative. Personally, I'm showing up at some more events. So, showing up at some high roxes and some races and saying, hey, let's hang out. The in-person element is super fun. And then I'm also working, kind of pro bono on this initiative called Load Women. It's a fundraiser that's and kind of a movement started by Claire Zai from Barbell Medicine, if you're familiar with her. And then
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Alyssa Olenek has come alongside and is also running this. And they brought me in for more of the creative part of things, which has been really fun. But it was founded in 2021. I don't know if you're familiar with kind of the NCAA weight room debacle.
Yeah.
The women's
Yeah.
weight room, there's a TikTok that went viral where they just posted, it's essentially like
A dumbbell rack.
a
Yeah.
dumbbell rack. It's
Yeah.
worse than your hotel's weight room. Whereas,
Way
of course,
worse. I don't even think they had a cable machine.
no, I don't
Like,
think so. It
yeah.
was so bad. And, the men's weight room, of course, is like elite,
Decked out. Yeah.
decked out. And so, of course, this went viral. And so, this kind of sparked this campaign where we're raising money for the Women's Sports Foundation, but also trying to get, changing the narrative and getting women in the weight room, saying, hey, this is about athletic performance, and it's also about your health and longevity. You should be lifting, and you should be lifting heavy. And Claire and Alyssa are great at giving educational content around that. And then what I'm kind of bringing to the table this year, along with creative, we're going to have some really cool apparel that you'll be able to purchase. All proceeds go back to the Women's Sports Foundation, but also sharing a bit more about like, here's kind of the history of women in strength sport and then kind of the marketing campaigns behind it. The Jane Fonda versus, Arnold Schwarzenegger of their times, and then that shrink it and pink it marketing strategy that we've been sold for years. And how do we change that narrative? So you can donate directly at loadwomen.com to the Women's Sports Foundation. You can buy some merch. And then we also have a cool like list of ways to get involved with like community activation, like invite a friend to the gym. Here's some like ideas that we have for you to support women in strength. And then there's some fun giveaways. We're giving away like Noble, and like some gift cards for strength training with Alyssa and Claire. So definitely check it out at loadwomen.com. And then also the Instagram handle is loadwomen.
I don't think there are three women that could be better leaders for that initiative than you, Claire, and Alyssa. I mean, you're leading the charge on all this stuff, and I think what you're doing is incredible. And I don't think that the gym or fitness in general should be, genderized, so to speak, or anything like that. It should be for everybody. So anyways, Tatum, this has been awesome. Your insights on the fitness and wellness industry, and building resilient brands and social media, and trying to avoid burnout and growth. I think it'll be extremely valuable to everybody listening. Where can people find you and learn more about working with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on pretty much every social media platform at Tatum Brandt, Brandt. I exist primarily on Instagram. I think that's where a lot of us tend to hang out in fitness. And then you can learn more about my brand studio, Brandt, Brandt, creative.co on social media. And then that's also the URL.
Awesome. So links to her socials, her website, and Load Women will all be in the show notes, and we will leave it there. Thanks everybody for listening, and I hope you have an awesome day.